Loneliness is one of the most powerful emotions we experience, yet it's also one of the least spoken about. We live in a world more connected than ever before. Phones in our hands, messages at our fingertips, millions of people just a click away. And yet, so many of us whisper quietly, "I feel lonely." Why? Because loneliness isn't about the number of people around us. It's about the depth of connection we have with them. When we don't feel seen, when we don't feel heard, when we don't feel understood, that's when loneliness grows. And the danger is, loneliness doesn't just stay an emotion. It becomes a story we tell ourselves, that we don't belong, that we don't matter, that nobody cares. But here's the truth. Loneliness is not a life sentence. It's a signal. It's your heart telling you it needs connection, it needs meaning, it needs people who truly see you. Today, I want to talk about how to deal with loneliness, not by ignoring it, not by numbing it, but by learning from it. Because when we learn how to transform loneliness into connection, we don't just heal ourselves, we create spaces where others can feel less alone too. Loneliness is not the absence of people, but the absence of connection. This is a truth many of us overlook. You can sit in a crowded room, surrounded by laughter and chatter, and still feel isolated. You can scroll through hundreds of messages, receive likes on your posts, and yet feel unseen. That's because loneliness is not solved by numbers. It's not about how many people are physically present in your life. It's about how deeply you connect with them. Human beings are wired for belonging, not just company. We crave to be understood, to be valued, to feel like our presence makes a difference. And when that need is unmet, even the busiest social calendar can leave you feeling empty. Think about this. If you are sitting across from someone and you share something important, but they are distracted, half listening or brushing it off, that moment can feel lonelier than being physically alone. Because what we long for isn't just interaction, it's connection. The difference is profound. Interaction is exchanging words, but connection is exchanging meaning. Interaction fills silence, but connection fills the soul. Loneliness teaches us something powerful. It tells us that what we need is not to collect people but to nurture bonds. Many of us try to solve loneliness by chasing more people, more events, more activity. Yet often, this only amplifies the emptiness, because the problem isn't that there aren't enough people in our lives. The problem is that we don't feel truly connected to them. What matters is not how many contacts you have in your phone, but how many people you can call when you're in pain at 2 a.m. What matters is not how many followers you gain, but how many friends you trust with your fears. When we shift our understanding of loneliness from absence of people to absence of connection, everything changes. We stop asking, "Why don't I have more people around me?" and start asking, "How can I go deeper with the people I already know?" That question reframes loneliness as an opportunity. Because instead of pursuing the endless chase for attention, we begin investing in authenticity. We stop showing up with masks, trying to impress, and instead start showing up as ourselves. And in that space, real connection becomes possible. The paradox of loneliness is that it often convinces us to withdraw further, to isolate even more, when in fact what we need is courage. The courage to reach out, to open up, to admit that we need others. It feels risky to expose our inner world, but that is the birthplace of connection. When someone says, "I understand, I've felt that too," loneliness begins to dissolve. What we have to remember is that every human is fighting silent battles, and connection grows when we dare to step into honesty. Sometimes, one genuine conversation can be more healing than 100 superficial ones. Sometimes, one person who listens deeply can replace 1,000 who simply hear. Loneliness is not solved in volume, it's solved in depth. So when you feel lonely, don't assume you need to add more people into your orbit. Instead, nurture the connections you already have. Ask deeper questions, listen more attentively, and share a little more of your truth. Because when we prioritize depth over breadth, we find that loneliness slowly loosens its grip. It is not people we are missing, it is connection, and that is something we can create, one honest moment at a time. True belonging begins when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Most of us spend so much of our lives trying to be accepted by others, shaping ourselves into what we believe people want us to be. We present the polished version, the strong version, the version that seems put together. Yet behind that mask, many carry insecurities, fears, and doubts they hide from the world. The irony is that in hiding those parts of ourselves, we often create distance instead of closeness. People may admire the image we present, but they can't connect with what isn't real. Connection thrives in authenticity, and authenticity requires vulnerability. When you think about the people you trust most in your life, they're not the ones who always appear perfect. They're the ones who have shown you their flaws, their struggles, and their humanity. Vulnerability is the bridge between isolation and belonging. It is the act of saying, "This is me, unfiltered. This is what I'm going through." And in that raw honesty, something remarkable happens. Others recognize themselves in you. They see their own struggles mirrored in your courage, and suddenly you're not alone. The challenge is that vulnerability feels risky. Our culture often praises strength, composure, and control, and labels vulnerability as weakness. But it is the opposite. It takes enormous strength to say, "I don't have it all figured out." It takes bravery to admit you're scared, uncertain, or hurting. That level of openness creates trust because people know you're being real. And real is what creates belonging. Belonging doesn't come from trying to fit in. It comes from being fully seen. When we only present the parts of ourselves we think others will accept, we trade authenticity for approval. The tragedy is that approval can still leave us feeling lonely, because people are not accepting who we really are, only the version we've manufactured. Belonging, on the other hand, is when people embrace you for your truth. That kind of acceptance dissolves loneliness because you no longer have to perform, you no longer have to hide. Think about how many of us suppress our emotions when we feel lonely. We tell ourselves, "Don't show weakness, don't burden anyone." And so we smile, we nod, we say, "I'm fine," when deep inside we're not. That creates a cycle where we stay unseen and loneliness deepens. But the moment we take the step to say, "I feel alone, I'm struggling, I need someone," we create the chance for genuine connection. Often, others will respond not with judgment, but with relief, because they too have been waiting for someone to admit the same thing. Vulnerability is contagious. It gives others permission to be open too. Belonging is not about being perfect. It's about being accepted in your imperfections. It's about the freedom to show up without masks, to be loved for who you are instead of who you pretend to be. That kind of belonging doesn't just ease loneliness, it transforms relationships. It turns acquaintances into allies, friends into family, and strangers into companions on the same human journey. So if you want to move from loneliness to belonging, start by being brave enough to show yourself. Let your guard down even just a little. Share your fears, your hopes, your struggles. Vulnerability is the doorway to connection, and connection is the antidote to loneliness. The more you embrace it, the more you will discover that true belonging begins not when others accept you, but when you allow yourself to be fully seen. Technology connects us, but it cannot replace human presence. We live in an era where the illusion of connection is everywhere. With a single tap, we can send a message across the world. With a click, we can see what someone ate for breakfast, where they traveled, or what they're celebrating. On the surface, it seems like we've never been more connected. Yet, beneath the surface, people are lonelier than ever. That's because while technology gives us access, it doesn't always give us intimacy. A notification cannot replace a hug, a like cannot replace eye contact, a video call cannot fully replace sitting across from someone and feeling their presence. We confuse communication with connection. Technology allows us to communicate instantly, but communication is not the same as connection. You can send hundreds of texts and still feel alone. You can scroll through endless feeds and still feel like no one really sees you. The human heart doesn't just need words. It needs warmth, tone, energy, and the subtle expressions that only come through presence. Technology is a tool, but it is not a substitute for the richness of being with someone in person. Think about moments in your life when you truly felt supported. Chances are, it wasn't through a screen. It was the friend who sat with you in silence when you were hurting. It was the family member who held your hand when you were afraid. It was the colleague who looked you in the eye and said, "I believe in you." Those are moments of presence, and presence cannot be digitized. Presence is about more than being there physically. It's about being fully engaged. But physical presence often makes that engagement possible in ways technology cannot. The danger of relying too heavily on digital interactions is that it creates a false sense of closeness. We can become addicted to notifications, mistaking them for genuine connection. The brain gets a little dopamine hit with every ping, every heart, every comment. But the heart still feels empty because these signals don't carry the weight of real relationship. They're surface level. They're fleeting, and when the screen turns off, loneliness creeps back in. This doesn't mean technology is bad. It is an incredible tool when used with intention. It allows us to maintain bonds across distances, to check in quickly, to share life's highlights. But we must remember it is a supplement, not a substitute. It's the bridge, not the destination. The real work of connection still requires us to show up in person, to make time, to listen deeply, to share space. Imagine two people talking face to face. There are pauses, gestures, eye contact, the rhythm of voices blending. Those unspoken elements create a depth that can never be replicated through text alone. The warmth of presence is what makes us feel safe, valued, and understood. That is why loneliness often lingers even when our phones are full of conversations, because our souls are still hungry for presence. If you want to deal with loneliness, technology can be the starting point, but not the solution. Use it to reach out, but don't stop there. Send the text, then make the call. Make the call, then set up a meeting. When possible, sit across from someone, share a meal, take a walk. Spend time without the distraction of screens. Those moments of undivided presence are what dissolve loneliness. Because while technology can connect us digitally, only human presence can connect us deeply. Serving others is one of the fastest ways to overcome loneliness. When we feel isolated, our natural instinct is to turn inward, to focus on our own pain, our own emptiness, our own sense of being unseen. But the irony is that this inward focus often deepens loneliness instead of relieving it. The more we dwell on what we lack, the more powerful that sense of lack becomes. One of the most transformative shifts we can make is to look outward instead of inward, to use our time and energy to serve others. In doing so, not only do we impact lives around us, but we also begin to heal ourselves. When you step into service, you create meaning. Imagine visiting someone who hasn't had company in weeks, or helping a neighbor carry groceries, or simply listening without distraction to a friend who is struggling. These acts may seem small, but they remind you that you have value, that you matter, that your presence can bring light into someone else's life. Loneliness thrives when we feel unnecessary or invisible. Service dismantles that by proving to ourselves again and again that we are needed, that we are significant, that we have something to give. Serving others also shifts our perspective. When we are caught in loneliness, our minds convince us that we are alone in our struggles. But as soon as we step into the lives of others, we discover that pain and need are universal. Everyone carries invisible burdens. By being there for others, we learn we are not isolated in our humanity. We are connected through it. And that realization is profoundly comforting. Service bridges the gap between isolation and belonging by reminding us that life is not only about what we receive, but about what we contribute. There is also something deeply healing about the gratitude that service creates. When you serve, you witness the appreciation in someone's eyes, the relief in their voice, the comfort in their presence. That gratitude doesn't just touch them. It flows back into you. It reassures you that your actions have meaning, that your existence has impact. Gratitude, both given and received, is one of the most powerful antidotes to loneliness because it reinforces the reality that we are connected to one another in ways that matter. Serving doesn't always mean grand gestures. It doesn't require a stage or an audience. Sometimes it's as simple as asking, "How are you really?" and then truly listening. Sometimes it's sharing a meal, writing a thoughtful message, volunteering a few hours of your time, or mentoring someone who feels lost. Every act of service is a seed of connection planted in the soil of someone else's life, and often those seeds bloom into friendships, community, and belonging. The paradox is that by giving to others, you end up receiving more than you imagined. You discover joy in places you didn't expect. You build bonds that weren't there before, and most importantly, you silence the voice of loneliness by replacing it with purpose. Purpose is the opposite of emptiness. When you know that your life can touch another life, loneliness begins to lose its power. So when you feel alone, resist the temptation to withdraw entirely. Instead, take one small step toward serving. Offer kindness, extend help, create value for someone else. In lifting others, you lift yourself. In giving, you discover belonging. And in serving, you transform loneliness into connection, meaning, and fulfillment. Building small daily rituals of connection creates long-term bonds. Loneliness often feels overwhelming because we imagine that overcoming it requires some grand solution, like finding a whole new circle of friends or making dramatic changes in our social life. But the truth is that belonging is built in small, consistent moments. It's the little habits of reaching out, checking in, sharing, and listening that slowly weave the threads of trust and closeness. Just like any strong structure is built brick by brick, strong human connection is built ritual by ritual. Think about how rituals work in families or communities. A simple tradition, like eating dinner together every evening, creates a rhythm that reinforces togetherness. Over time, it's not just about the food, it's about the conversations, the laughter, the comfort of knowing that no matter what happens during the day, there will always be that moment of connection. Similarly, when we build rituals into our daily lives, like calling a friend on our morning walk, sending a thoughtful message before bed, or making time each week to meet someone in person, we create anchors of connection that fight off loneliness. These rituals don't have to be complex. In fact, the simpler they are, the more powerful they become because they are sustainable. A 5-minute check-in with someone can sometimes do more to strengthen a relationship than a rare but elaborate gathering. It's the consistency that matters. Humans find security in knowing that someone will show up again and again, even in small ways. That reliability is what deepens trust, and trust is the foundation of belonging. Loneliness thrives in unpredictability. When you're unsure if anyone will reach out, or if your presence matters to others, you begin to feel invisible. Rituals counteract that uncertainty. They create patterns where connection is expected, not accidental. Imagine starting your day with the ritual of writing a gratitude message to one person in your life. Over time, not only does that person feel appreciated, but you also feel more connected because you've reminded yourself of the bonds you already have. Small rituals like this slowly rewire your mind to see connection as a natural, daily part of your existence. Rituals also give us something to look forward to. Anticipation itself is powerful. Knowing that you'll have coffee with a friend every Friday morning, or that you'll check in with your sibling every Sunday evening, gives you a sense of continuity and belonging. These moments act like emotional landmarks, guiding you through the week and reminding you that you're not alone. Even when life feels chaotic, these rituals create stability and comfort. What makes rituals so powerful is that they don't just create connection in the moment, they compound over time. A single phone call may not feel like much, but 50 phone calls over the course of a year builds a relationship that can carry you through the hardest times. Rituals are investments, and the returns are seen in stronger bonds, deeper trust, and lasting belonging. So, if loneliness feels heavy, don't wait for grand gestures or sudden breakthroughs. Start with something small you can repeat daily or weekly. Reach out to one person. Create one simple habit of connection. Stick to it, nurture it, and let it grow, because it's not the size of the gesture that matters, but the consistency. And with enough consistency, small rituals of connection turn into strong ties that make loneliness a distant memory. Loneliness is a signal, not a sentence. It points us toward deeper meaning. Too often, people treat loneliness as a permanent condition, a label they must carry for life. But loneliness is not a fixed identity. It is more like a message, a gentle alarm from within that something important is missing. Just like hunger tells us we need food and thirst tells us we need water, loneliness tells us we need connection. When we begin to see it this way, we stop treating loneliness as a curse and start understanding it as guidance. The danger is when we ignore the signal. Many people try to silence loneliness through distractions, endless scrolling, overworking, or numbing with entertainment. These distractions may quiet the feeling for a moment, but the signal always comes back stronger because the need behind it remains unmet. Loneliness will not disappear until we respond to what it's asking for: genuine connection, belonging, and purpose. When we misinterpret it as a permanent sentence, we fall into despair. But when we recognize it as a signal, it becomes an invitation to change something in our lives. Loneliness can guide us to examine our relationships. Are they surface level, or do they give us space to be real? It can push us to reflect on our habits. Are we isolating ourselves, or are we making small efforts to reach out? It can even prompt us to ask deeper questions about meaning. Sometimes loneliness isn't only about missing people. It's about missing purpose, missing contribution, missing a sense that our lives are connected to something larger than ourselves. There is wisdom in loneliness if we're willing to listen. It reveals what we long for most. For some, the signal points toward family, urging them to repair bonds or spend more time with loved ones. For others, it points toward community, reminding them that humans are wired to be part of groups that share values and goals. For many, it points toward authenticity, calling them to drop the masks and show their true selves so that real connection can happen. Every time loneliness speaks, it is guiding us toward a life richer in connection and meaning. The shift comes when we stop asking, "Why am I lonely?" and start asking, "What is my loneliness trying to tell me?" That reframing changes everything. Instead of being trapped in shame or self-pity, we become curious. We start exploring new ways to connect, to contribute, to belong. Curiosity leads to action, and action begins to dissolve loneliness. What's also powerful is that loneliness can deepen our empathy. When we've experienced it ourselves, we understand the pain others carry when they feel unseen. That understanding makes us more compassionate, more willing to reach out, more intentional about including others. In this way, Loneliness not only heals us, but equips us to heal others. The very thing that once felt like a weakness becomes a source of strength and connection. Loneliness is not a life sentence, it is a compass. It's a reminder that human beings are not meant to live in isolation, that we are designed for connection, belonging, and love. Instead of fearing it, we can honor it. Instead of hiding it, we can learn from it. Every time it shows up, it is offering us a chance to realign our lives with what truly matters. And when we listen closely, loneliness doesn't just remind us that we need others. It reminds us of the deep meaning that comes from living life together,